Hello everyone and welcome to Keeping It Krischic's pandemic special, Quarantelling Stories. I'm your host Kristin Vartan here with the latest story of resilience during the coronavirus pandemic. This week on the talk show, I have a very special guest, Laverne Delgado. She is the founder of nonprofit Freedom in Fashion. Delgado herself is a survivor of domestic violence and has personally seen the way that beauty and fashion and creativity in general can help people in dealing with trauma and healing from it. So please join me today as I chat with Laverne Delgado about her story of style and survival. Laverne, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show today. I feel like my talk show, the reason I even started it is to tell stories where creativity has an impact in communities, and freedom in fashion is so exemplary of that.
Thanks for having us. Thank you for even acknowledging what we do and wanting to learn more. It's always great when people like yourself want to raise awareness on their platform. So I'm pumped to be here.
Great. Thank you so much for saying that. I mean, I've seen your story on NBC, on Spectrum. For those that don't know freedom and fashion as well, could you please give us a little bit of an overview of how you use beauty and fashion as healing tools?
Yeah, we use fashion and beauty to empower and educate women and children overcoming injustices like domestic violence, sex trafficking, and other abuse. We'll do things that utilize like fashion design and how intricately it is connected to our identity, and we'll use the strength that has, and we'll tie it to actual business development, professional development. So our youth or women, if they so choose to go out on the field and pursue internships and jobs, they're not only equipped skill wise as far as learning the fundamentals of fashion and beauty, but they're also breaking through barriers and creating new neural pathways that will help them thrive in the workplace and in their personal life as well.
That's beautiful. And I've seen that you guys have done fashion shows in the past when social distancing was not a thing. You've worked in the fashion industry. So how have you seen this translation between like the artistry of it really make an impact on them?
Fashion is the most universal form of communication. Since the beginning of time, we've been using it to communicate tribe, gender, status. So when we tap into it in its most authentic form, we have a lot of leverage and a lot of power to communicate and enable our students to have breakthroughs.
There is a psychology to it because I've actually interviewed a fashion psychologist, Dawn Karen, about this exact topic. I don't know if you're familiar with her work, but she talks about how fashion really does give people the strength to cope with trauma. And I actually wanted to ask you, because you have been very open in the past about your own experience with trauma. And I was wondering how fashion and beauty has personally been a source of healing for you. And of course, you can say as much or as little about it as you want. I want you to feel very comfortable talking about this.
We like to help all of our students become advocates and get to a place to where they believe and know that their stories are one of their best and strongest assets. So absolutely open book. I have sexual abuse in my past as when I was 4 years old, but my most recent and probably hardest trial or source of trauma would be a domestic violent marriage. I just got out of that a year ago, and it was really interesting because I was going through and creating these programs as that relationship was evolving and the domestic abuse was escalating. Not only is there a stigma, but there's a story that this kind of abuse only happens to a certain kind of person, and no way could it happen to like advocates or activists or leaders, so that was definitely my hardest trial and source of trauma, if you will, when I was going through and creating these programs, and every year they're refined and developed and strengthened. And when we were teaching it to the women and girls, I was actually going through it myself. It was really interesting to share a lesson with them, knowing like, oh my gosh, I need this just as much. There is no hierarchy in the classroom. We're all equal. We are all going through things. I went through it with them in a lot of ways. So the power of fashion is really just a medium to have really intentional and critical conversations and crucial conversations. And it's a non-abrasive way to do that.
First of all, thank you so much for sharing that. That takes a lot. And I know that you have been open in the past about it, but I bet no matter how many times you talk about it, it's still like a very hard thing to do.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, always. I mean, that's our job as journalists. We want to bring a voice to the voiceless, right? And I bet that humility and that vulnerability that you have with your students has really helped them even have the power to overcome this trauma.
Thank you. I received that when the divorce started, and I just knew that people were watching me to see how I would deal and how I would cope. And it was really a testing moment of, am I going to walk the walk? It's really easy to empower someone else to share their story, but when it's your image and reputation and all these things on the line, it's a little bit different. So it was an opportunity for me to hopefully be an example to everyone, that not only that I serve, but that I know that there is nothing to be ashamed of if you've gone through domestic violence or any other abuse or hardship. It's your story. It's my hope. They've told me, but it's my hope that me continuing to share only inspires other people, regardless of where they are in life, to open up and advocate for themselves.
That message too is so important right now because, I mean, you know this, I'm sure, but the numbers have just like skyrocketed because people are inside, and the people that have been in very abusive home environments, they don't have anywhere to go. And I saw on ABC7, there's been a 25% increase according to OC authorities. And one of the reasons why is because a lot of educators see and report these cases when their students come and talk about it, right? So there's nowhere to go and talk about it. So how has your outreach been impacted because of this?
I probably get at least 1 to 2 calls personally a day, or text message, email, just people reaching out that I know, that I don't know, asking for help and resources. So it's a significant increase. Resources and shelters are booked out, and it's a hard time. It's interesting. There's a lot of opportunity, and we're at Freedom in Fashion trying to remain creative and bold in our approach to helping people. I personally am taking calls that, I had a call last week, in the middle of the night by someone I know, wasn't even, a client of ours, but it's just people even that I know and on our team are noticing DV and just more violence in their households, simply because they're there more, or in their neighbor's house. Or I wish I had a bit more of an encouraging tone with it, because we are doing what we can. However, it's gnarly out there right now.
I think there is some hope because I've seen you still working out there. I mean, you delivered beauty and wellness packets to Alexandria House. Could you talk more about some of those projects you're doing during this era?
Yeah, so during a time right now where we don't have access to our students as far as personally, because of social distancing and quarantine, we talk to our partners in like the Alexandria House, like the Elizabeth House, and different places, not only here but in Las Vegas, and we have stuff happening in Miami. We're talking to them very intentionally to figure out what they need for that month. It was resource. They needed toilet paper, food, water, and we fulfilled those needs. And then of course we are fashion and beauty, and we know the power of that a sheet mask can just do at the end of the day. Self-care, self-love during a pandemic. We want to give them the best brands. We partner with T3 Micro and Smashbox and Benefit and all these, brands are getting, products that they may have up until that point thought they would never have because they can't afford it.
Just like you said, even a face mask or something that is a luxury item does help with that self-care and seeing themselves as worthy, beautiful, and that they can overcome. I mean, I was watching this one interview with one of your students that you helped, that said her husband would tell her every single day that she wasn't beautiful, and receiving these packages at Alexandria House really made her feel worthy.
Yeah, absolutely. When you that's the thing, a common misconception about domestic violence, and one of the most hurtful questions anyone can ask a victim or survivor is, yeah, but did they hit you? I hope we stop asking that question. It's so sometimes the words are what hit the hardest. It leaves such a residue. And a lot of work goes into recreating the neural pathways for us to actually believe and know that we are beautiful. It's not as easy as just like a motivational talk and now we think we're good. There's actual heavy mental labor that goes into recreating a new neural pathway, and that's the work that these women and children are doing.
Yeah, words are powerful, and you speak to that power. I want to know what your message of resilience is for women or any person that is dealing with this kind of abuse right now during this pandemic.
Shame will keep us in bondage. There's so many women and leaders that I know that are out of it, but they're still in it mentally, and the as I mentioned, the effects of the trauma, if not dealt with and not addressed, will continue to grow and play themselves out in new ways. Try to get around people who will validate and love you and love your story and not make anything that you've gone through small, because where shame lives, freedom can't. You are not alone. I don't care what position you're in or where you're from or what race you are. This happens everywhere across the board. You may not trust even people in your inner circle because maybe they know the abuser or whatever. Call the DV hotline. I've called that hotline before. There's resources out there to even just practice saying it. Oh, that's such a huge step. I've gone through a lot of therapy to even get to the place to say, like, I was a victim of domestic violence because I was not going to be one, but so it just starts with that, eliminating shame, tell one person, and then go from there.
That was really, really inspiring, Laverne. I want to make sure that people can find freedom in fashion and continue supporting the good work that you're doing.
We have a website, freedominfashion.org. We love Instagram and Facebook. We interact with our following and supporters a lot on there. So Freedom and Fashion. If you'd like to donate, a lot of people are giving via Venmo right now and Cash App, Freedom and Fashion on there as well. And we have a website, as mentioned, where you can find our donation page. And if you'd like to give that way, there is a huge need for help. So if you are at all moved, we appreciate your help and your love and support to our women.
I wanted to say I've been really inspired by your story and so privileged to have been able to tell it and help you tell it. I really wish that Freedom in Fashion the utmost blessings during this time and going forward, even after the pandemic.
Oh, thank you. Receive those blessings, and mirrored back to you. Thank you for having me on and shining a light on what we're doing. If you need anything, a phone call or an email away.
Thank you guys so much for joining me on today's episode of Keeping It Krishic's pandemic special, Quarantelling Stories. Do not hesitate at all to call 911 or the domestic violence hotline if you find yourself in an unsafe home environment. And of course, if you have a story of resilience to tell, or you know someone that does, you can DM me at Keeping It Krischic. You can tune in every single week for a new episode of the talk show, but for now, stay safe, and I'll see you guys next time.